Good morning. Welcome to our Zoom worship service. My name is Ryan Yuri. I'm the Family Ministries Program Associate. Reverend Elizabeth is out at PCEI today offering pet blessings, but she has graciously pre-recorded today's Zoom service for us. We preface our service by acknowledging that the land on which our homes and our church were built was not uninhabited when European settlers arrived here with their ideas of conquest and ownership. For those of us who live in Moscow, Pullman, or nearby communities, we live on the ancestral homelands of the Nimipu, called Nez Perce by the French-speaking traders, the Palouse, and the Chichumsh, called the Coeur d'Alene. If you're joining us from another place, I encourage you to discover who inhabited or moved through the place where you now live in the times before colonization and genocide, and try to find out where those people are now. We pause and remember that we live on ground that is sacred, ground that was stolen, ground that cries out for justice and responsible stewardship. May our remembering help us find the courage to do our part to restore wholeness to the earth and all her peoples. And now let's join our voices together for our words of welcome, unison chalice lighting, and sung affirmation. Whoever you are, wherever you've come from, whatever your beliefs, whomever you love, and however bumpy your life's journey, know that you are welcome here. We hope that everyone here has a chalice or a candle to light, something to light it with. Let us light our chalices together.
We're the Thompsons. I'm Susan. This is Paul. And this is Michael. In the light of truth and warmth of love, we gather to seek and seek to share.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung in every land by every tongue.
Good morning. It's hard to believe that it's been over 18 months since we last gathered together in our sanctuary. I am so proud of the ways this community pivoted and learned new skills. We've been able to adapt and survive and even thrive in this new pandemic reality. That said, it's been kind of a long haul. This summer and fall have felt particularly tough to me. With the vaccine widely available last spring, it felt like we might be on the verge of something approaching normalcy. I stopped seeing people, myself included, as potential disease vectors. Hugs were okay, and small gatherings of fully vaccinated people. I even ate in a restaurant once or twice. And then came Delta, the rising case numbers and the rising death rates. It felt like a cruel trick. So when I came across a blog post that described this moment in time as the beginning of a second marathon, just after we crossed the finish line of the first one, it resonated with me deeply. I wrote it on a sticky note and stuck it on my wall because this is how I function these days. My brain just isn't working the way it used to. So I've been looking at that sticky note and thinking about it for a month and a half now. And I wanted to share my thoughts in hopes that this metaphor will be as useful for you as it has been for me. So let's begin our service, though, by singing, "Come, Come, Whoever You Are."
Ours is the
invite you now into a time of meditation or of prayer. In these days of illness and strife, we may find ourselves overwhelmed, stretched, pulled in so many different directions at once. Fear of sickness, of getting others sick, these fears haunt us. Anxiety drives us. Uncertainty and indecisiveness sap our energy. Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. We keep going, we keep on keeping on, even when our bodies cry out for rest, even when our spirits cry out for rest, even when our poor hearts, battered and bruised, beg to be allowed to break. Find the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. What if this time is offering us an invitation to let go, to set things down, to release everything in our lives but what is most important? Plants allow themselves to die back each fall in order to provide the seed with the energy it needs to survive the winter, to grow in the spring. Are we being invited to do the same? In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony. What if everything we need to bloom into a new future already lives inside of us? What if we are held through all of our changes in a love beyond our comprehension? There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. May we trust that love to hold us as we let go. Amen, and blessed be.
Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony. Seek the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, watch me flower, carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony.
Our reading this morning comes from that blog post that I mentioned. It's titled The Second Marathon, A Thought for Pastors on Walking the New Normal by Reverend Jenny Smith. We just ran a marathon. We crossed the finish line. We made it. We did a hard thing. Then, instead of collapsing at the finish line in a heap, instead of drinking water, instead of resting our aching bodies, something else happened. An official-looking race organizer slapped another number on our back and pushed us toward another starting line that mysteriously appeared. Wait, what? A second marathon? Right now? Why? Because our world doesn't know how to stop unless a global virus shuts down the world. White supremacy pushes and coerces and manipulates into productivity and results. Capitalism relies on resisting rest and driving our bodies for the bottom line. These forces celebrate when we ignore what our souls whisper. Yes, our second marathon has begun, ready or not. Problem is, our bodies are still recovering from the first marathon. Maybe the answer is to stop running the second race. What if we looked at each other and gently nodded, slowed our forced jog, and started walking together? What if we walked our second marathon side by side? No racing, no competing with anything or anyone. Resting when it's time to rest, saying yes to a new idea when it glistens with possibility, saying no when something feels too heavy, asking new questions in places we assumed the old answer, giving others permission to rest because we choose rest, questioning the speed at which we live and move, loving people with beautiful boundaries in place, taking a nap, breathing deeply. Maybe this is how we disrupt the deeply ingrained oppressive realities of our world. We choose to walk together. I've never actually run a marathon, but I have completed a couple triathlons. And what I like to do after I cross the finish line is go to a restaurant and drink a beer and eat some French fries. And that's actually, as it turns out, exactly what I ordered when I went to the actual restaurant last spring, back when I thought that this marathon of COVID might be over. However, it did feel like after that happy moment, I had another number slapped on my back. I was shoved into a race I never signed up for. I think I understood cognitively that people's resistance to getting vaccinated meant we were likely to get mutations of the virus. I even remember saying out loud that I thought we'd be in and out of varying levels of lockdown for a few years. But understanding something intellectually and living it in this particular body turned out to be two very different things. So as I've been moving through this second marathon, there are days when I want to rage at the people who refuse to wear masks, who refuse to get vaccinated, refuse to do their part to shut this disease down. And there are days when I just want to crawl under the covers and cry. Most days, though, instead of yielding to those feelings, I just sort of keep shuffling along. Lately, though, with the help of this blog that I've just shared, this metaphor of the second marathon, I've been wondering if there's a better, more deliberate and mindful way. One that looks like walking deliberately instead of shuffling. One that looks like resting and leaning on one another to get through. So I want to offer you 4 key practices that I think might help us survive the second marathon. The first practice is grounding. Grounding for me consists of checking in with my physical self. I might do a body scan meditation, or I might identify one stimulus coming in through each of my senses, something I can see, something I can smell, something I taste, hear, feel, or touch. I stop my monkey mind when I do this, when I'm grounding, and I'm able to show up for what I'm experiencing in the present moment. One thing that I've discovered is that for me, overfunctioning is an anxiety response. If I keep myself busy, I don't have to feel all the uncomfortable and painful stuff, which would be great, except all that uncomfortable and painful stuff has a way of getting louder when I refuse to listen to it. Grounding practices allow me to feel the grief, the fear, the anxiety, and of course it is uncomfortable to feel those things. But the other thing I've learned is that most often the discomfort's not as bad as I thought it would be when I was running away from it through overfunctioning. I often go back to a moment when my son Daniel was about 4. I was trying to give him a quick goodnight kiss and rush off to a meeting, but he wasn't ready to let me go. So he grabbed a hold of my shirt with a strength that you really wouldn't expect from a 4-year-old. And the more I tried to pull away, the harder he gripped. Suddenly I said to myself, Elizabeth, what are you doing? Your baby needs you. No one cares if you're late to the meeting. So I relaxed in and cuddled him. And the minute I stopped away, literally that instant, he let go of my shirt, gave me a quick kiss, said, "Good night, Mommy," rolled over and fell asleep. Now, when I become aware of the fact that I'm pulling away from an uncomfortable feeling, I tell myself that just like Daniel, that feeling needs me. So I yield, I lean in. The release isn't always instantaneous, but it's never been as painful or as difficult to move through as I fear. Maybe someday I'll stop resisting so much, or maybe that's just such a normal human tendency that I'll keep learning this particular lesson over and over throughout my life. In any event, this first practice, grounding, is about feeling what we are feeling, coming into the present and yielding to the discomfort or the pain, allowing it to move through us unhindered. That's the first practice that I think will help us get through the second marathon. The second practice is stillness or rest. My practices that invite stillness are related to the practices that allow for grounding. Often the stillness arises after I've moved through whatever my grounding practices need me to move through. I might bring my attention to my breath or to an object like a candle flame. I let my mind and heart, body, spirit just settle. I allow myself to be held. A good example is the time of Shavasana at the end of a yoga practice. After a good hour of being in touch with my body, stretching and breathing and releasing and moving and holding, we get to my favorite part, which involves just lying on the ground in Shavasana or corpse pose. After a really good practice, I get to that moment and there's just nothing. Nothing on my mind, nothing in my heart, just rest, just still. Now, I can't always take an hour to do yoga, so I've gotten in the habit lately of, in the middle of the day, if I start feeling myself getting spun up or losing a sense of who I am and what I'm doing, I make myself stop and go out on my back porch. I'll drink a cup of tea or a glass of water sitting in the recliner chair. I'm not allowed to bring my phone or a book or anything. I have to just go and rest, just be. And I have this metaphor, it's kind of gross, so forgive me, but it's like a nonstick pan. Like thoughts can come, but they just slide off of me like a greasy nonstick pan. I've also lately been trying to integrate at least one lying down rest period every day. Even if I just go put my feet up for 20 minutes, even if I don't fall asleep, my day goes better if I just make space, make an appointment. I put it on my calendar for a power nap. Sometimes the power nap, if there's nothing that comes after it, turns into a real nap. Last week, there was a day when I fell asleep at 3:30 and I barely woke up in time for dinner. Now, I have an inner voice. I call it my inner Puritan. And the inner Puritan tries very hard to convince me that resting when I haven't completed all the necessary tasks is self-indulgent and wrong and sinful. But here's the thing. I am more productive when I rest. And I know this because last Saturday, I spent 3 hours staring at my computer screen, typing and then deleting, and getting absolutely nowhere. For some reason, I chose to listen to the inner Puritan, and I ignored the voice that was saying, you're too tired to think, sweetie. You should go lie down. When I finally gave up and rested, I slept for, I think, about 45 minutes. Then I got back up, finished the task I had spent the entire afternoon not doing in approximately 20 minutes. Lesson learned, point taken. But this is probably another one of those lessons that I'm going to have to learn over and over and over again throughout the whole course of my life. Which leads me to a third key practice that I think might help during the second marathon: self-compassion. In the months since my divorce was finalized, I've been working my way slowly through Kristen Neff's new book, Fierce Self-Compassion. In it, she details how women in particular are socialized to prioritize other people's needs and ignore our own. She invites us to harness our inner mama bear energy on our own behalf. What this looks like for me is trying to hold my inner self-critic to the same standards of kindness that I would hold myself to in an interaction with someone else. So if my self-talk is something I would never say out loud to another human being, I'm not allowed to say it inside my own head either. There's a line in the Desiderata by Max Ehrmann that reads, "Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself." I've historically had a hard time finding that line. I tend to swing back and forth between being too disciplined, too harsh and demanding of myself, and then having these brief moments of being completely overindulgent where I give up and I eat the entire carton of Ben & Jerry's while binge watching 4 seasons of some silly TV show. And what I've come to recognize is that pattern is a subtle form of self-harm. So I've been working on balance, on that sort of gentle, wholesome discipline. Now, balance isn't stasis. It's millions of micro adjustments, and sometimes even macro adjustments. So it's a process of finding what feels right, that balance between discipline and gentleness. I had a bad fall a couple of weeks ago, and my usual exercise routines weren't accessible to me for a time. I knew I needed to move and stretch, but I also needed to do that without making my injuries worse. So I wound up doing this thing where I'd kind of get out my yoga mat, and instead of my regular practice, I would just kind of ask my body, sweetie, what do you need? And then I would just do my best to give it those things. When something hurt, either in the moment or in the aftermath, I just wouldn't do it anymore. And this might seem like a no-brainer, but I'm a former collegiate athlete, so I was trained to push through pain. I had to diffuse a ton of negative self-talk in order to find my way to the gentle discipline that allowed me to heal. What helped the most was when my massage therapist, who was working on my knots, said, "Your back feels like you are mad at yourself." We talked it through, and she helped me realize that I was mad at myself. I was mad at myself for falling, and I was also mad at myself for not healing faster. And my mad was making me tense the exact part of my body, my upper back, that was trying to heal. My mad was keeping me from healing. I'm so grateful to her for helping me unwind that particular pattern. Sometimes we need friends to help us see things that are hidden in our blind spots or hidden in our upper backs, which leads me to what might be the fourth practice that could help us survive the second marathon. We need to offer ourselves and one another abundant grace. Trauma, especially long-term trauma like we're experiencing at the moment, has an impact on our bodies and our brains, our cognitive abilities, and those impacts vary from person to person and from moment to moment. We may find ourselves being more forgetful, feeling overwhelmed more easily. We might get trapped in rabbit holes, just go seeking more and more information, drilling down to a level of detail that just isn't useful. We might be anxious, afraid, jumpy. We might feel numb, like we're sleepwalking through life. Some of us might get reactive or angry or irritable. The truth is that In a trauma of this duration, most of us are going to experience most of these impacts at some point. I mean, on this multi-marathon journey we're on. So we need to recognize that we're not going to be as productive as we're accustomed to being. We're not going to be as energetic as usual. We're going to make more mistakes. We're going to drop more balls. So we need to lower the bar. When I meet with families who've lost a loved one, I always tell them that there are no rules for getting through beyond do your best not to hurt yourselves or one another. I actually think that's the right bar for these times. Now, if we find ourselves in particular feeling irritable or more easily offended than usual, if our feelings are a little bit more fragile, or if we get our feelings hurt in a situation that normally we would be able to brush off, we need to know that that's a part of the fatigue, the trauma fatigue we're experiencing as a result of the pandemic. Sue Allard, a beloved member of this community who died a little over 2 years ago, used to say that some people need a little extra grace. These days, I think we're all some people. We all need a little extra grace. So let's extend it. Let's extend it to ourselves and to one another. Because if I know one thing, it's that I am not going to make it through this second marathon without the help and support of my community. I've never been much of a fan of rugged individualism, but right now, it's downright toxic. If we are going to make it across that second finish line, we'll need to go easy. We'll need to let go of all kinds of beliefs and judgments that just aren't serving us anymore. We may need to let go of some behaviors too. But I do believe we will find our way. In June, I went to Coeur d'Alene to watch my swim coach attempt an Ironman. Talk about an act of stamina. It was 104 degrees that day, and my coach unfortunately succumbed to heat stroke and didn't finish. But I watched any number of folks make it over the finish line. Some of them stumbled across, barely able to move. Some of them bounded across, inviting the crowd to cheer them on. My favorites were the ones who had friends or family members come out and join them for the last little bit. I said to my friend Glenn, there's no way I could ever do that. It's insane. An Ironman is a 2.4 mile open water swim followed by a 112 mile bike ride. And then you get off your bike and you run an entire 26.2 mile marathon. Holy smokes. Glenn said, sure you could. You just can't think about the whole thing. You focus on what's right in front of you and you keep going. Glenn knows whereof he speaks. He's completed several Ironman races. He even qualified for the World Championship in Kona one year and ran the race there. So his words resonated with me. If I think about this as a second marathon, I feel defeated before I begin. If I focus on the joy that's accessible to me along the way, it becomes something else entirely. Just another part of the journey. Just another part of life. So, let's walk this second marathon. Let's rest and laugh and play. Let's take the time to ground ourselves. Let's allow ourselves to be still. Let's practice self-compassion and offer abundant grace. We will find our way through so long as we stay together, keep our hearts open, and trust the Spirit to carry us. So be it, and blessed be.
When I am frightened, will you reassure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Will you be strong for me? Sing to me quietly. Will you share some of your stories with me? If you will show me compassion, then I may learn to If you will show me acceptance, then I may learn to give as you do. Then I may learn to give. When I am troubled, will you listen to me? When I am lonely, will you be my friend? Will you be there for me? Comfort me tenderly. Will you share some of your feelings with me? If you will show me commitment, then I may learn to love as you do. Then I may learn to love.
Our closing reading is For One Who is Exhausted, a Blessing by John O'Donohue. When the rhythm of the heart becomes hectic, time takes on the strain until it breaks. Then all the unattended stress falls in on the mind like an endless, increasing weight. The light in the mind becomes dim. Things you could take in your stride before now become laborsome events of will. Weariness invades your spirit. Gravity begins falling inside you, dragging down every bone. The tide you never valued has gone out, and you are marooned on unsure ground. Something within you has closed down, and you cannot push yourself back to life. You've been forced to enter empty time. The desire that drove you has relinquished. There's nothing else to do now but rest and patiently learn to receive the self you have forsaken in the race of days. At first your thinking will darken and sadness take over like listless weather. The flow of unwept tears will frighten you. You've traveled too fast over false ground. Now your soul has come to take you back. Take refuge in your senses. Open up to all the small miracles you rushed through. Become inclined to watch the way of rain when it falls slow and free. Imitate the habit of twilight, taking time to open the well of color that fostered the brightness of day. Draw alongside the silence of stone until its calmness can claim you. Be excessively gentle with yourself. Stay clear of those vexed in spirit. Learn to linger around someone of ease who feels they have all the time in the world. Gradually, you will return to yourself, having learned a new respect for your heart and the joy that dwells far within slow time.
There is
please join me now in extinguishing our chalices. We extinguish this chalice that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light our paths as we leave this place, and may it guide our way until we are together again. Thank you all so much for coming to today's service. Whatever you do with the rest of your day, I hope you'll remember to go slow, let yourself be tired, let yourself rest. And as you keep going, putting one foot in front of the other, remember to take time to enjoy the journey.